Hi, I hope you're having a good day. I wanted to welcome you to our next module, which is Module 7. Last week we took up the difficult issue of sexual assault, and we looked at, as always, social context and how that influences how we think about and respond to sexual assault. We looked at concepts such as victim precipitation, which essentially is the justification for sexual assault in which the victim's behavior is thought to be responsible, at least in part, for the assault. We also looked at the issue of false accusation, and I think you saw from the daycare case that false accusations can have really devastating effects. In some cases, it resulted in suicide on the part of some of the workers who were accused of sexually assaulting the children in that daycare facility. Which takes us to our next module, which in fact is about suicide. We will be, as always, looking at social context and seeing the way in which context influences how suicide is regarded. In some societies, suicide was regarded as honorable. And actually, in our own society, in some contexts, it is seen as honorable. A good example would be a soldier who takes action that clearly is going to result in his or her death, but does so in order to protect fellow soldiers or to advance the cause. So we'll look at some of that. We'll also look at some data on suicide worldwide, get a sense of how widespread it is, and we'll look at some of the different kinds of suicide. Altruistic suicide is a good example of the kind of suicide I just described with regard to soldiers, but there are other kinds as well that we'll look at. We will also consider the issue of physician-assisted suicide. Should people have the right to do away with themselves? And if so, should they have the right to have someone assist them, whether it's a physician or someone else? This is something that has become much more a topic of conversation, and in fact there are now several states in which this is legal. Washington State, Oregon, California, New Mexico, Montana, and I believe Vermont. So, you know, there were predictions that Oregon was the first state to make this legal, and there were predictions that people would abuse it, and that's not turned out to be the case. There are protections put in place to see to it that it's something that is used under legitimate circumstances, such as somebody with a terminal disease suffering with a lot of pain. So we'll look at that, and we'll have an opportunity to discuss some of the so-called benefits of suicide in our discussion this week. We'll also look at social context in the discussion and think a little bit about whether there are things that we can do in terms of changing our social context in order to inhibit or minimize the use of suicide as a remedy that people choose in order to deal with difficulties they're having in their lives. So I'm really looking forward to that discussion. As always, you all have many interesting comments to make in our discussion. So this should be an interesting one. So I'm looking forward to it. I hope you are. And I hope everything is going well. The undergraduates have a paper due in this module, and I'm looking forward to reading those papers. So have a good week, and as always, if you have any questions, any concerns, send me an email or give me a call. I'll be happy to discuss them with you. And I'll see you on the discussion board.